speaker today is a local Columbus product. Grew up in Grove City, went to high school at Bishop Ready, and went to American University in Washington for college. Steve is a CPA by training. He joined Spartan Logistics as its chief financial officer in 1996 after 5 years with the public accounting firm of Arthur Andersen. He points out that he escaped from Andersen before it went down, not afterwards. Steve is second generation president of a family business with over 25 years experience in providing supply chain solutions. Founded in Columbus, Spartan employs over 300 team members and operates 17 locations with 3.6 million square feet in 9 cities and 4 states. Now that makes them almost a dead tie for the 2 largest and both family-owned Columbus-based warehousing businesses. Spartan is an asset-based owner and operator of industrial real estate and trucks, and they focus on the handling of fast-moving food-grade inventories. Spartan's mission is to provide great logistics service to happy customers, resulting in full buildings staffed by passionate team members. It sounds like a great ad, Steve. In addition, Steve has worked with his family to develop additional services in industrial real estate and logistics, and he also operates his own leasing, construction, and development companies. Please join me in a warm Rotary welcome for Steve Harmon.
Okay, what's all this talk about logistics? Everyone's always talking about logistics here in Columbus. Logistics, logistics, logistics. Why does everyone keep talking about it? Why should you care about the logistics industry in Central Ohio? Would you like $1,000? So seriously, logistics activities typically make up 15 to 20% of any product. Every food on the shelf, everything you eat, the cost of getting it to you makes up somewhere between 15 and 20% of that product. Between 1980 and 2000, the average American household has saved $1,000 every year for those 20 years because of the reductions in the underlying freight logistics and the costs they are consuming every year. You're welcome. Right, that's the applause line. Thank you. So why is logistics, why does everyone talk about Columbus as a logistics hub, right? People keep talking about, oh, Columbus is all about logistics. The big number is that Columbus is within a 10-hour drive of 47%, call it half, of the population of the United States, and a third of the Canadians too, by the way. Why is 10 hours important? 10 hours means you can reasonably expect to deliver a full truckload of goods from point to point within that circle, within one day. And a full truckload of goods moving from point A to point B is the least expensive way to move products. So in other words, putting it within Columbus gives you the cheapest way to distribute to half the population of the country. In addition, Columbus has an excellent road network, rail, air. Now we don't have water, but there are less and less goods that ship via water all the time. This is why Columbus is such a huge explosion of logistics growth over the last 20 to 30 years. As water has been de-emphasized as a method of shipping goods, it becomes much cheaper and easier to ship it point to point via truck, which is why Columbus is a good region for growth. Columbus is an excellent environment for the construction of warehouses. We have flat ground in every direction as far as the eye can see. Result in a lower occupancy cost, quite honestly. Today, there are over 200 million square feet of industrial space in Columbus, Ohio. And that's likely to continue to grow. That that space is almost completely full. There's, of that, maybe 5 to 8% vacancy on that number today. If you need a warehouse space in Columbus today, call me, I'll build you one, because there's not that much you're going to want available. Columbus is the 15th largest city in the United States, with dozens of universities. This provides a large and stable and growing and talented labor force. There are over 3,000 companies today in and around Central Ohio involved in logistics. There are over 100,000 employees around Columbus who work in some work for those 3,000 logistics companies. In fact, the industry today has 15% of the non-public workforce working in logistics. More importantly, the logistics industry has grown 12% on average year over year, every year since 1980. In addition to companies like mine that handle logistics for other companies, many companies are based here that own and operate their own logistics and warehouses. So how did we get here? Why this huge explosion in logistics? Why 12% growth year over year? The seminal point in the history of trucking and logistics growth was Reagan deregulating the truck industry in 1980. The Motor Carrier Act of 1980, prior to that, the industry was extremely segregated. There were rail companies, there were warehouses, and there were trucking companies. And trucking authority was highly regulated, very expensive, and very difficult to get. That meant that there weren't very many companies doing it, and their prices were high. Following deregulation, anybody who could operate safely could haul any commodity for anyone, from anywhere, to anywhere, at any price. What a concept, right? The free market, I think people will like this. I think this will work. I think this will catch on. This occurred at a perfect demographic point. Malcolm Gladwell, in his book, Outliers, The Story of Success, writes about the 10,000-hour rule. His hypothesis, he puts forth a lot of support in the book, is that it takes 10,000 hours to get really good at anything. And that's 5 years of working full-time, focused on it, building a network of experience, contacts, and mistakes, so that when an opportunity presents itself, you can be ready to act. What that means is that any of you can quit your job tomorrow and become a professional golfer by working for 5 years at it straight. Maybe not. But there's still hope for me to make the senior tour. So the 10,000-hour rule happened when a lot of baby boomers, born in the late 40s, 50s, came of their working age in the 70s, and by 1980, when deregulation happened, there was a vast pool of qualified people ready to take advantage of this opportunity that trucking deregulation presented. Many of them quit their jobs with these large established firms and said, "That's so easy, I can do it." Today there are over 800,000 members of the National Association of Small Trucking Companies. There's a real proliferation of trucking companies all over the country as people with experience moved in to seize the opportunity that trucking deregulation presented. Moreover, this sort of creative destruction let warehousing companies start their own trucking fleets. Existing trucking companies said, well, I can go buy up some warehouses. I'm going to integrate all these services like some of these other companies are doing. My father actually was working for ABF for 10 years that he had worked, built a network of contacts and sales and people that he could call that trusted him, and quit his job. Had been there 15 years, worked his way up, and quit his job as sales director and said, I'm going to start my own trucking company. 1982. He's a great example of how people just sort of said, I'm gonna go try and make a go of this on my own. So throughout the 80s, all these manufacturers who used to have their own trucking fleets, Trucks were so expensive that it was cheaper for them to go out and buy their own truck, buy their own trailer, hire their own drivers, and do their own compliance to move their goods. The problem with that is you were only legally able to haul your own goods, which means you loaded up your truck at your warehouse, you took it over to your customer, and you came back empty. So it was an enormous fixed cost, and half your miles were empty. When small independent carriers moved into this niche, the first thing they did was wring these empty miles out of the network. Think about it. In theory, it would be possible to cut your costs by half, because now substantially all miles can become loaded miles, as I can take those goods from point to point, get something there, and come back pretty close to where I started. So not only were manufacturers able to cut their costs, they were also able to convert fixed costs to variable costs. If I don't have this cost of these fleets sitting there, I'm just paying fee for service. They were able to better respond to seasonal demands and changes. They were able to eliminate upfront capital investments, and they were able to obtain specialized experience in trucking and freight operations. So the next thing that happened is companies looked around at the rest of their supply chain costs and said, I saved a lot of money on trucking. I wonder what else I could outsource and convert from a fixed cost to a variable cost. So now they started talking to companies like mine that were newly forming to take advantage of this opportunity. Spartan Logistics started when my father's trucking company went to work for he went on a sales call with a manufacturer in West Virginia, pitched how great of a freight services he could provide, and they said, well, that's really great. But once I get there, I don't have a warehouse in Columbus I trust. So my dad, being an enterprising individual, said, well, tell me about how that would work. How is it priced? How would you do that? So he left there with a warehousing contract in hand and no warehouse. So that's a good example of how trucking companies continued to seize advantage of the opportunity to work with manufacturers to provide great service and cut their costs. Many 3PL companies specialized throughout this period of growth in the 80s and 90s. They got into packaging and bulk storage and freight brokerage. Anything that related to products in motion, more and more large manufacturers look to outsource. Today, the North American third-party logistics market represents $170 billion annually, which is up 7% from 2013. Another important confluence of opportunity in the logistics industry was the emergence of the personal computer in the 1980s and 90s. It became very easy to track large quantities of data very inexpensively at the warehouse level. Now I can provide, as a small provider, the same kind of reports and up-to-minute detailed information that it used to take large mainframes the ability to provide. So third-party logistics have become cutting edge in integrating data with their companies, with their customers over the last 20 years. We've moved past PC inventory management into networked, web-based, perpetual warehouse management systems that provide our companies provide our customers real-time reports on their inventory levels, their moves, and enable them to make good inventory decisions. We hand off transactions on a regular basis. Everything that ships and received updates within their system automatically. The move towards globalization has also helped contribute to third-party logistic company growth. Now it doesn't matter where it's made, it's still going to wind up in a distribution center close to as much of the population as possible. So whether something is made in the South or in California or in China, it can still come here to a warehouse in Columbus and be inexpensively distributed to half the country's population within one day's trucking shipment. There are many types of third-party logistics companies. There are trucking specialists. There are brokerage specialists. We point out all the time that we are asset-based. We actually own warehouses and trucks. There are many companies that don't own a thing. They work a network of telephones to match up needs with people who can do it. We believe that at the end of the day, somebody's got to load a truck and deliver it. We don't think that is ever going to go out of style. Some examples of some of the companies that have come to really give rise to this market. Trucking, obviously, J.B. Hunt and Schneider are some of the biggest. Ocean carriers, APL Logistics, air freight, we all use FedEx every day. There are large companies that specialize in the huge manufacturers, companies like Menlo and Ryder Logistics. There are freight brokerage companies and such as Hub Group, which actually purchased Pacer Logistics here in Columbus, that specializes in moving containers, rail containers. There are asset-based regional operators like mine. The largest logistics companies here in Columbus are Ohio Distribution Warehouse, FST, NGL, and mine are the largest 4 logistics providers based here in Columbus. Trucking brokerage has become a huge specialty for Coyote Logistics, XPO Logistics. And then there are companies that specialize in niche industries like cold storage and agriculture and port operations. So when we look at the reasons why anyone would want to use a 3PL provider, the first thing that we tell them all the time is if you need to create a multi-location distribution network within 90 days, you are not going to go out and buy or lease warehouses, develop trained personnel, and be ready to operate. Working with an outsourced provider is the best way to create a network on short term. If you have large seasonal swings, this is another way to get full utilization out of a warehouse and drive down the cost. If you just need overflow warehousing on a seasonal basis, outsourcing can be a really great fit. A lot of logistics companies have specialty services that it would take a while for you to develop internally. But fundamentally, one of the big reasons that people outsource their logistics services comes down to labor arbitrage and space arbitrage. Because we're permanently in the market of real estate and committed to owning and operating our warehouses, we know that we can provide a better long-term storage cost than companies could go out and lease space for themselves. Similarly, with our labor, we're a small, flexible, family-owned company with a very committed workforce that's passionate about working here. Large manufacturers frequently have legacy costs and huge benefit costs and have to add levels of supervision in order to have the same guy unload stuff from a truck and set it down in the warehouse. We're going to spend the same amount of working labor, but a small local business is able to do it much more effectively. Fundamentally, it's a question of cost. We are going to save the companies we work with money. Duh, or else they wouldn't do it, right? In a 2014 survey of large manufacturers, companies that outsource saw an 11% average cost reduction in their shipping costs and a 6% reduction in their cost of carrying inventory. Do you want to work in logistics? I mean, who wants to work in logistics? Everybody wants to work in logistics. There's one. I got one who loves logistics. So the industry offers a wide variety of pay ranges, educational and skill levels, and as I said earlier, employs over 100,000 people. These stats are according to the Columbus Regional Logistics Council. Entry-level packers and handlers, generally with just a high school degree, make between $20,000 and $30,000 annually. Forklift and equipment operators, 30 to 40. Truck drivers, which is a very high demand skilled occupation, sometimes in tough working conditions on days like today, can make anywhere between $50,000 and $100,000. Customer service, inventory control, data entry, a lot of those jobs pay anywhere between $30,000 and $50,000. There's a large range of middle management, and as in our industry, as in any industry, things like HR, IT, safety, sales guys, accounting, all those boring guys. Warehouse, the middle management roles are anywhere between 50 and 100,000. Warehouse supervision, guy supervising 3 people or a guy supervising 100, can be anywhere between $40,000 and $100,000. And senior executives who eat a lot of lunches and give speeches and generally stand around and do nothing but look good, well, I think we all know that's priceless. So what's the secret to success? So first of all, let me give you a better concept of who our customers are. Okay, our customers are large manufacturers. We work with the auto manufacturers. We work with ConAgra, that has huge amounts of food products and other consumer products goods, like Heinz and Pepsi and Coke. We work with Kroger to fill orders for their stores. So anything, and then we work for a large number of small businesses. One of our businesses recently was able to have goods ready to fire off on Home Shopping Network. And when that ad ran on Home Shopping Network, literally our order board lit up for the orders that were placed directly as a result of their ad on Home Shopping Network. When we start working with a new customer, the first and most important thing we can tell them is we are committed to your success. Look, we're asking people to trust us with their stuff. We're promising them that we will deliver the same quality service and have a passion for their customers as if they were doing it themselves. That can be a hard thing for companies to wrap their head around. And they want to know that it's important to me and my reputation and my family's reputation. And it's not just, oh, I need your business so I make my earning targets for next quarter. We believe that a private family business has a significant advantage over the large operators in this space because the most important thing we're asking for is trust. Then we have to have knowledge, which comes from experience. For both us and our customers. 9 out of 10 problems we have in a startup with a new customer result from we didn't ask the right question and they, quite honestly, gave us the wrong answer because they didn't know either. I mean, what are your sales going to be next year? Seems like a simple question, but I have yet to meet any organization that could ever actually tell you with great accuracy what the answer to that was. Communication is a critical component of any outsourced project success. We understand who the decision makers are and set up what we're going to communicate to you, how often, and how we're going to communicate that. Technical competence is enormous. Does the management of the company have the experience and the enterprise knowledge to find solutions that minimize freight costs, improve productivity, minimize inventories, and deliver products accurately and on time? So the logistics industry does face a number of challenges. I've talked about all the good news. We're growing, people love us, people outsource, people are going to continue to outsource. These large manufacturers don't sit around and go, you know where we should drop 10 million next quarter? We should build a warehouse. I mean, that is so unusual for companies to make the decision. They'll build large mixing centers that they will operate themselves. But if they're just going to go start something up and try it, they're going to work with a company like mine. So we like the pace of change to continue to grow in this industry. But we do face significant challenges as an industry. Number one is leadership demographics. The 40-year-olds who started this business in the 1980s, you know what they are now? They're 70-year-olds. Thank you, CK. So there are really 2 types of companies in our industry. There are those who have a dynamic succession plan in place where the next generation of management is being properly trained and mentored up to lead the company for the next 30 years. And then there are those with the founder still sitting in the chair, pounding on the desk, making every decision. But those companies won't be with us for very much longer. Consolidation is another major factor in our business. Like any maturing industry, the trend is towards fewer larger players. The latest wave of deal have been triggered by an availability of capital, the demographic pressures I just discussed, the shakeouts from the Great Recession here we just went through. So there's going to continue to be a consolidation in our industry with a trend towards fewer, larger players. Technology is also driving. The growing complexity and dynamicism of supply chains requires increasingly advanced information technology solutions. And the most cutting edge ones that can exploit their customers' data to help them make better decisions are going to be very successful in this playing field. Regulatory issues also reflect a great challenge for us. They like to change the trucking rules every year or so. Well, then they like to put out trucking rules and then suspend them. And then Congress gets involved. And then the administration, whatever, you get the point. Trucking operators can operate on any level playing field that is certain and predictable over a long period of time. What we can't do is continue to jerk around trucking regulations and have an unlevel playing field that rewards cheating on those regulations. Security is a big factor in an age of global risk for our industry. Think about the tsunami and the nuclear disaster in Japan. There were whole auto plants that shut down because it was thought safety stock in an era of global data integration wasn't as important as it used to be. There are lots of things that can disrupt a supply chain, and safety stock sitting in a warehouse somewhere still has value. Sustainability is a big buzzword in our industry, a big need for our industry. Customers increasingly prefer products that are made and sourced in the right way. Ways that minimize businesses' social, economic, and consumption impact. That might be something as simple as what we do with our plastic and cardboard in the warehouse. It might be some of the technology involving the truck that gets better utilization out of diesel fuel with lower emissions. So where do I see this industry going in the future? Well, growth patterns are going to continue to dominate who we are and what we do. We're going to continue to see a shift from the Northeast to the South and West. We're going to continue to see manufacturing move to Asia and on even into Africa and other parts of the world. Companies like mine can really help manufacturers be flexible as to where they operate, how much they distribute, and to whom. E-commerce is a tremendous challenge. When we're no longer supplying individual office depots, but we are supplying UPS shipments directly to people's homes from Office Depot, the requirements for trucks and warehouses will change. Supply chains are becoming increasingly complex and dynamic, and sourcing locations are being made all over the world, and they're being made quickly. Orders are going to become smaller and more frequent, and that is going to change what the warehousing and the trucks look like. These developments will have their impact on day-to-day logistics, but let's be honest, we're in an industry where nothing is ever normal. This is just the new normal. We have always been flexible, and we will continue to be so. So, I know we're all in Central Ohio here. Let's come back and talk about Central Ohio. What does all these global pressures and trends mean for logistics here in Central Ohio? The decision where to locate a distribution center is always going to be driven by optimizing freight costs. Look, a warehouse is going to cost you this within a fairly narrow range, the same whether it's in Dallas or in Columbus or in Boise. The labor to operate that is going to cost relatively the same to take it off the truck, put it in the warehouse, pick the order, load it on the truck, and ship it. What can vary widely is that cost of distribution. That warehouse in Boise could be free, but the freight to get it to its end user from there does not make that economical. Columbus will continue to be economical as long as we're smart about building our infrastructure, our labor, and and some other regulatory issues. We can always have a cost advantage in the shipping of goods here in Columbus. Moreover, our robust freight market and the presence of manufacturing here allows for relatively balanced inbound and outbound freight. Carriers love to bring loads into Columbus at a fairly low rate because they know they can always get a load going out. Similarly, the reverse is true. People can always get a load going out, so they're happy to come in here. So suffice to say, some markets are so out of balance. Maybe there's a large manufacturer there that ships loads out every day, but there's a small local population consuming goods in that area. That means every truck coming into that market comes in empty, and that manufacturer to get loads out is still paying for the miles going both ways. Columbus is very well placed to have an excellent balance in our freight market, which keeps our freight costs low and drives Columbus as a distribution center. Look, we have all the people, technology, real estate, infrastructure, and resources to be part of winning in the logistics industry for the very long term here in Columbus. The biggest threats to Columbus are us. We are our own biggest threat. If we fail to regulate and tax and provide the dynamic local economy necessary to attract workers in industry, they'll take it somewhere else. We have urban schools that fail to educate entry-level workers. We are the problem here. We are our own worst enemies. But you know what? When you turn that mirror around, what you find out is we also have the ability to be the solution. We can fix these problems in front of us, and we need to. The reason I love what I do here in Columbus is that Columbus has a culture of integrity and respect and servant leadership and teamwork and all the other values that are essential to the success of our company are part of the values of the people raised in this area. Central Ohio has a culture and the values, and when I understand that my Christian mission to be a servant leader to my customers is well felt and connected to by people who want to come work for us, that is winning to me. That is my vision of success, is to be a servant leader and to be a great place to work here in Central Ohio. I think as a result of these factors, we're going to continue to have a great growth in logistics here for many, many years. Thank you all very much. Are we doing questions?
Yeah, will you
Sure. Questions? Who's got a question? Ken, I knew you'd have a question.
What technological changes are most likely to affect your business in the next 5 years? Which ones?
What technological resources, what changes have a biggest impact to our industry in the next 5 years? I think the major impact of technology on our business over the coming decade is going to be what is generously called big data, where everything lives on the internet and everything is exploited transparently from manufacturer through supplier to distributor, right on down to the retailer and the end user. We have been moving that direction for years, and there is about to be complete transparency across the entire supply chain by all the players. The companies that exploit that data best and minimize their costs the best with it are going to be the biggest winners.
What's your relationship with the Teamsters Union, and how do the trade unions participate?
This doesn't work. I thought I heard him say unions.
They have a big part of the business.
Mama always said, don't talk about no trouble. The Teamsters unions and other unions here are quite honestly part of the legacy costs. When you look at the big carriers that had union environments, there aren't very many of them left. They were too slow to react in the nimble global marketplace that has evolved over the last 30 years.
I was wondering how has the backlog of containers at the West Coast port affecting capacity?
All right, backlog at the West Coast ports. Great question. You know, again, that's a great example of us being our own worst enemy. We have a great port on the West Coast. There are limitations to to Oakland and to Seattle and to Mexico. The best port on the West Coast is LA Long Beach, but we're our own worst enemy. We can't figure out how to have happy labor and management quickly flowing containers through that West Coast port. As a result, it limits the entire industry. We had a project to make Christmas tins for Dollar General stores here in Columbus, over the whole country for Dollar General. We did not get the products. They were, the tins were made in China. We did not get the products until the end of October. That's entirely too late. They came in, they could not get cleared out of those West Coast ports, and they had what's called a team carrier sitting there waiting for them to come off. That is 2 drivers who are going to drive for 12 hours while one sleeps, then they're going to switch, and so that truck never stops moving. It's the fastest way to get something here from the West Coast. So there was a significant increased freight cost to get that here from the West Coast, and it was still late. They think they are pretty close to a labor solution at the West Coast port, but the reality is it's still going to take 6 months to backlog all the ships and containers that have stacked up while there have been labor issues.
Do you see the third Panama Canal having any impact on Columbus?
I love the Panama Canal expansion and the additional canal that's been talked about building. Anything that makes it cheaper to get things here is going to be a win long term. Ships from Asia can now should be able to clear the canal at a lower cost, land containers across Houston, Jacksonville, Savannah, and get those containers on rails and into the Midwest, where they can be quickly and efficiently distributed to 50% of the country at a lower cost. I think that is going to continue to drive the growth here in Central Ohio.
What do you see relative to consolidation going forward in the industry?
What do I see about consolidation going forward? I think, we see an existing trend towards consolidation for the demographic and economic trends I talked about, but also complexity. All these big high-tech data, Internet of Everything sort of solutions are going to require huge fixed costs, and there is going to be additional consolidation. I say to my team all the time, I say, we're one of the companies that has a succession plan in place. That means we're going to buy up a lot of the people who don't, or go take their customers over the next 10 years. Get ready, because we are growing. Obviously I believe the smaller ones will get bought up, and the ones without the next generation of management in place will get bought up. Sir?
I personally marvel at Amazon and their ability to get product out.
Me too.
Do you see Amazon as a threat or a model? How do you see them?
Amazon is excellent at packages. I think they are a great partner for supply chain companies like mine. We specialize in whole truckloads of goods. I'm going to get a whole truckload of computers and take it to Amazon, and they can worry about getting them to the individual customers. I've never tried to play in that e-fulfillment space. People who do are going to find an incredibly competent and high-tech partner that they're going to have to be awfully prepared to battle.
Last question.
Sir?
What's the factor for diesel fuel prices versus going to compressed natural gas?
The question was about diesel versus compressed natural gas. CNG we're toying with it on an individual level. We've tried a couple trucks. The problem is that it's not commonly available enough that we've kept our engines bi-fuel where they can use either fuel. And for the enormous fixed cost of that engine, even if I save $2 a gallon, it is very difficult to recover that fixed cost right now. Prices are going to have to come down a little bit for CNG to really be competitive with diesel.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
I'm sure you'll wait around for...
Sure.
This is a gift from Argo and Laney for coming and speaking with us. I appreciate it.
Thank you, CK. Appreciate it.
Please come and join us next week to hear Dom Tiberi speak about distracted driving. I adjourn the meeting.